So last week we looked at one perspective from Moshe Ibn Tibon on what he called one of the weirdest Gemaras in all of Shas, most theologically problematic Gemara, because the Gemara says, well, the Lord himself divides up his day, he has a very rigid itinerary. What?
Yeah, Hanukkah.
It was before Hanukkah. It was last time we learned, so it wasn't last week. Whatever it was. 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago.
6? 3 weeks ago.
What? 3? I don't know. Whatever it was. Whatever it was. Okay, fine. Whatever it was. So we saw the petition of Moshe Ibn Tibon, who took a very rationalist perspective. Yes.
Yeah, the perspective was that.
I don't like these labels.
If I recall correctly,
it's a good perspective, isn't it?
It was a good perspective, right? But he said, right, basically what do? You realize that the whole thing is ridiculous, which means it must not be pshat. Right? Right. Once you realize that God doesn't have a schedule and it's not pshat, so now you work backwards.
Right. Wasn't that Avram ben Ramam's pshat that there are some that are just so...
Oh, for sure. And we watched it in play. And then he said, what do we do? At each stage, at which point he reached an absurdity, then he added a metaphorical layer to it. Right, and he ended up thinking this was a metaphor about human life and the extent to which Hashgacha weighs in on it. This time we're going to look at someone who's more from the Kabbalistic camp, mystical camp.
Can we go over like kind of what he said?
Do you have the sheet from last week? You have it? You have it?
Yeah.
You have both sheets from last week? Yeah, so I gave you the English summary. You want to read it? That's the English summary of what he said.
Great. Okay. Given the patent absurdity of this Agadata, when understood literally, Moses interpreted it as a philosophic parable. In his view, it deals with the 4 stages of life, particularly of human beings. The first stage is the period of birth and growth of the entity, likened to the first 3 hours of the day, which are warm and moist, as in the nature of spring, the season of renewal. God studying Torah alludes to divine wisdom that produces birth and growth of all life forms composed of the 4 elements until the entity is fully formed. The next stage, likened to the second 3 hours of the day, alludes to the period in which the entity functions at full physical capacity, and in which the food it intakes enables it to replace the bodily matters which is expended. Judgment represents the sustaining of that which exists in an orderly, fixed manner. By the end of this period, however, most of the natural moisture of the entity possessed at birth has dried up, leading to the entropy of the body, characteristic of the next period. Hence, in order to continue to sustain the entity, whether it be large or small, and enable it to function with the power of all its faculties despite the weakening of the body, God must now sit on the throne of mercy. For everything we see deteriorating, we say that it requires heavenly mercy. In the final stage, the body is weak and diminished together with all its powers, and is like naught before God, who is represented as sitting in heaven, the eternal existent, and ridiculing it. Leviathan alludes to the corruption of entities, or the evil inclination, which also weakens in old age. God ridicules it and informs it that it toiled in vain in seeking out physical pleasures. In a similar vein, Ibn Tibon interprets the subsequent Talmudic discussion regarding God and the Leviathan and God's nocturnal activity.
Okay, good. Right? So you remember, right, Big Adol, Moshe Ibn Tibon takes this weird Gemara of the 12 hours of God's day, and I made a few extras, you can copy more, or I can print it. So Moshe Ibn Tibon, right, said, look, he took this rationalist perspective, and he said, look, this must be a mashal. I'll print a few extra for you can get. Here, I'll print another 5. Okay. That the mashal of God's 12-hour day is really speaking about mankind, their lifetime, and how Hashgacha is involved at each level. Now, if you remember at the beginning of the year, I pointed out that fundamentally at their core, I know this is going to be hard for certain people to hear, the rationalists and the Kabbalists agree. Because they both agree that Agadata should not be taken literally, and that instead of taking them literally, they hide philosophical ideas. The question of what type of philosophical ideas behind it, okay, so you'll tend to find one type in the rationalist school, another type in the Kabbalistic school, but Bikaron, they're both getting at the same point, right? There are very few thinkers.
The rationalist school was like much before the Kabbalistic school.
Sure.
Avraham ben Harambam is way before.
Rambam.
But Tosfos is very early also.
Well, Tosfos is not the Kabbalistic school, nor is he the rational. Right? Tosfos is more on the literalist camp, right? Of them, but before who? And who are you talking about? Before who?
Any Kabbalistic perspective.
Okay, mystical. Are you happy? Even though both of those are bad translations of it, fine.
Like based on the Zohar, or like?
It could be Zoharic, but there are mystical traditions in Judaism that precede the publication of the Zohar. Whatever you think about the authorship of the Zohar, right? Whatever you think of the authorship of the Zohar, right? We have early works in Hechalot, which are commentaries on, right, Pardes and Merkava and things like that, right? We have early, not to mention the fact that I know you're all going to kill me, but the Rambam is a mystic. I know that's horrible, but the Rambam is literally a mystic. No one else. Most Kabbalists are not mystics. The Rambam is a mystic, right? Because the Rambam thinks. What do I mean by that? What is the definition of a mystic?
Someone who thinks
someone who thinks that the goal of the world is unio mystico, right? Which means unification with the divine, which is literally the way the Rambam describes Olam Haba, right? That the ultimate goal is that your consciousness become one with the consciousness of the divine, right? The reason it's a bad translation because we think that mysticism and rationalism are opposite. They're really not, right? Meaning the early Kabbalists didn't view it that way. The early rationalists didn't view it that way, right? It's just that there's no good translation to Kabbalah. That's really the problem, right? That's what it all comes down to. The Rambam was not a Kabbalist; he was a mystic, right? He was a rationalist, mystic, right? Many Kabbalists are not mystics, right? They don't believe that the point of the world is unio mystico. I know Ephraim is like horrified that I said the Rambam is a mystic, but
don't you agree, Ephraim?
But he is. He cares about unio mystico. That's all it means.
How depends on your definition.
I mean it very specifically. He thinks the ultimate goal of the world is unio mystico. That's it.
No,
yes.
Well,
fine.
What does that mean?
I think when you say that the Rambam is a mystic,
that's because people
don't. Connotations. So just don't say it. Say he does whatever.
I'm just pointing out that all I'm pointing out in this is that I'm just pointing out the difference. Gersley, all I'm doing here is pointing out the problem in translating from English to Hebrew here. Right. A Kabbalist is literally just someone who has received a body of specific mystical traditions, not like
the
very specific mystical
other
traditions.
Ones.
Right. That's all it means. Right. And my point is that it wasn't only Zoharic. Right. There were other schools. Right. So.
Yeah. You're saying that's what he believed, that there's different set. I'm still not getting the idea of what mystico is.
Unio mystico just means that you believe that the ultimate goal of the world is to become one with the divine, or your intellect to become one with the divine.
Okay.
Right? That's what the Rambam says the point of the world is. Right? That would make him in English a mystic.
I mean, Gemara, learning all the shas and everything would put you up there, wouldn't it?
No, not for the Rambam. No, for the Rambam it's philosophy. Right? The Rambam says halacha won't help you. Halacha just prepares you to be able to tap into the intellect via philosophy. Right? That would be the Rambam.
So he holds the thing that brings you to Olam Haba is not learning Gemara.
Correct. He's Beferish. That's in the Mishnah Torah. That's like in Mishnah Torah.
Learning Pardes.
Yes.
Yeah. Davar Katan is Gemara. Right? Gemara is Davar Katan.
You should learn only Pardes then.
No, you can't learn
Look,
Pardes.
okay, I really do want to get to what I was doing, but
because you can't learn Pardes.
Listen.
He compares it
to summarize that perspective. There's this wonderful letter by Yosef ibn Kaspi. Does anyone know who Yosef ibn Kaspi is? Gersley. Gersley. No, he's not. He's one of these radical rationalists in the medieval period, a mefarish on the Torah. And at some point, he had this letter that he felt really humiliated because one day he had a kasher shaila about a spoon. And Elamai, he was just a philosopher. He was, he spent his day learning Pardes and thinking that was Talmud Torah, which it was. So what happened? He had a basic kasher shaila. He didn't know the answer. And he felt humiliated because there was this rabbi down the block, right, who classic, Talmud Chacham. He knew Hilchos Kashrus, but he knew nothing about whatever. So he's like, I'm asking him a shaila, and he said, but then I comforted myself because he said, look, he knows spoons and I know God, right? So yes, that the Rambam perspective really is that that halacha is davar katan, right? That doesn't mean it's not important; it's just davar katan, right? And the Rambam does think that ideally you need that before, right? You won't fully be able to understand davar gadol without it, but ino chanami. Okay, fine. But with that aside, what I gave you here was the Maharal, because the Maharal is in many ways, as was pointed out in a recent article in Chakira, the Maharal, in a certain sense, is trying to be the Rambam, right? Meaning he's trying to, as we saw, the Rambam's end goal in life was to write a Perush on all of Agadah. She never got around to it, right? Or he was scared to, as Rabban Bar Rambam said. Maharal tried to, Right? Now the Maharal may have had a slightly different hashkafic bent than the Rambam, but the notion that we should try to go through every Agadata and Shas and try to find its deep core, right, that was what he was trying to do. So what I gave you here is the Maharal and his Perish and Agadah. And we won't read it all through, but you can see, right? He really does try to go line by line through every Agadata and Shas and try to understand it, right? I mean, it is a breathtaking feat. So he says, okay. So if you look at this page, right, it starts here, not there. This page, this page. Yeah, exactly. Right, that's the one. He says, "Mamar hazeh balavar hefech da'atam v'kavanatam, ki hu yitbarach eino misulak min ha'olam." So
I do not see what
all the way on the right.
All the way on the right.
On the
Read from right to left like you do Hebrew. Yeah. Mamar hazeh balavar hefech da'atam v'kavanatam, ki hu yitbarach eino misulak min ha'olam ritzono mitached inan entza'im. Right, so he said, first of all, already he does somewhat agree with Ramoshe ibn Tibon that what's the point of this Gagadata? Right, and this is interesting, right? That both the rationalist writer and the Kabbalistic, so to speak, writer, they right off the bat they do both agree on one thing. That what is this Gagadata about? Bigadol?
The interaction of
Hashkacha, right? That there is Hashkacha. Right? They both see it, which is, by the way, a good thing. Right? Meaning it's a good thing. Why is it a good thing? It's a good thing because if it weren't the fact that radically different people could come to a similar shot about an Agadata, then that means Chazal hid their message too well. Right? Meaning, right, if Chazal hid their message in Agadata, the point is that somebody should be able to get it. If two radically different thinkers can both look at the Agadata and have an intuition about what type of topic it's talking about, that means that Chazal were successful in what they did. Right, so he says, "V'zeh shamar shalosh sha'ot rishonot yoshev osek b'Torah, ki ha'Torah hi seder nimtzaim eich yiyu noagim." And if you notice, this is also very similar to Moshe ibn Tibon. He said the first 3 hours, the Gemara says God learns Torah. Why Torah? So he says, what is Torah? Remember, this is also Moshe ibn Tibon, and slightly differently.
The world.
Yeah, I mean, the Torah gives you the blueprint for the world. The Kol Soda Mitziyut B'Chol Torah. V'dar zeh yadua ma'od b'divrei chachamim midrash rabot HaKadosh Baruch Hu ibid b'Torah u'barad ha'olam v'Torah omered b'Reishit bara Elokim ve'in Reishit el Torah shnemar Hashem k'ni Reishit darko ad kan. Harei ki ha'Torah seder v'nimus ha'nimtzaim. So Torah is, right? Now the Zohar obviously is very into this idea, but he didn't even need to quote the Zohar. Right? The Zohar's line is, right? He quotes the Midrashim, which say it in Hebrew. The Zohar says in Aramaic, which is Histakel ba'Raiso baralma. Right, but he says the Midrashim go in this direction also, that the Torah is the blueprint of the world. Ve'ein bazeh safek ki seder kol nivrim v'chol olam hi ba'Torah. What?
Who would disagree with that? Torah is the blueprint of the world.
No,
No, and I'm saying the Kabbalah probably understands it slightly differently. He says, "Kamosha amru hafoch ba degulo ba ach shedavar zeh shu seder nivraim rachok mehasagat ha'adam." However, what that means and how the world actually works is very hard to grasp. L'kach ein mefurash b'Torah davar zeh b'feirush rak behelem v'haster. Ki ha'Torah sama advarim kifi ma shehem hane'elamot nistarot v'gluyot mefurashot. Said how exactly the Torah guides the world is not clear, and that's why the Torah has multiple levels. Things that are explicit and things that are hidden. Klal hadavar. What's the rule? Ki ha'Torah yiseder nimtzaim v'hu yitbarach yodea seder nimtzaim. That the fundamental first thing you got to get out of this Agadata is the Torah is the blueprint for the world, and God understands how things work. Ve'ena ozev seder shelahem ad shiu mesulakim mimenu legamrei. He doesn't leave it, right, until they're totally mesulak. They're disconnected from him. V'zeu she'osek b'Torah ki eina Torah rak nimuz v'zer nisem asher yitbarach yodea. And then he pulls a very nice move, and he says, Gerstly, what was one of the great challenges against Jewish philosophy from the Greek period? What is the one that the medieval philosophers are always bothered about?
That God can interact with the world.
Correct, right? That God, everyone would say, okay, fine, maybe there's a prime mover, someone who originally created it. But then, that doesn't prove that God's involved. So Maharal says, wait a second. If Torah proves that God created the world, right? That's a symbol for God creating the world, right? Meaning that there's an order to the world, which is hidden in Torah. So that shows that God created the world, right? So the first 3 hours of the day are, right? Unlike Ramosha Ibn Tibon, who said this is a mashal directly about the human being. Right? He says, no, it talks about it's philosophical stages. Right? Stage 1 is the first thing you need to believe is what? That God created the world and knew the blueprint. Mm-hmm. Right? That's stage 1. What do you need to do after that? Prove. Yes, exactly. So he says the first 3 hours of the world, creation, God was osek b'Torah. He set up the blueprint. Right. Then, ubishaloshot shniot nitosaf hachibur al nimtzaim mashu dan et nimtzaim. He said. So what does the Gemara say? He does the next 3 hours.
Then he
judges. What does judge?
He interacts with us and
exactly. Kimelech shdan et amo. Right. Now. Right, you see, he's not taking the exact direction of Moshe Ibn Tibon, right? Saying, right, this is a mashal for man, but there is a certain similarity that this is a Gemara that is talking about the way in which God interacts in the world. Just from his perspective, it's talking about God, right? The first thing you got to know, the first 3 hours or the first 3 logical hours, let's say, right? The first thing you got to know is that God first created the world. Then you've got to know that God, Dan et ha'olam, is involved in the world. Af ki ein za adayin chibur gamur aleihem, shar adayin hu poel hadin b'mikabel. Ve'ein ze chibur gamur, mikol ma'akom hadavar hazeh hu chibur b'ma el nimtzaim ba'atzmam, v'shaloya b'shalosh rishonot shalo lo chibur klal nimtzaim ba'atzmam, rak yediyat haseder. He said, but judging is interesting, because judging implies that it interacts, sort of. Why? Tell me, what? He's reading this very carefully.
Because he has a system of interacting.
Yeah, and what does a judge do? A judge interacts, but when?
After it happens.
Post facto.
Yeah.
Right? Post facto. Right? So stage 1 is you've got to believe that God created the world. Stage 2 is that God cares about the world. That doesn't prove he's involved yet. It proves that he cares about what's going on, not necessarily that he's involved in it. B'shalosh sha'ot shlishit nitosaf hachibur mashu poneh aleihem lefarnesotam. What's the next 3 hours? Right? He moves from Kisei Adin to Kisei Arachamim to be Mefarnes them. Or in other words,
interacts the world.
He interacts the world. I mean, he doesn't just react, he
interacts.
He interacts. He's proactive. V'davar zeh tosef chibur shlo hayu b'shalosh shot shniyot she'edan otam shu nivdal min asher hu dan. Because before that he was just judging. V'davar zeh shu zanu mefarneset and nimtzaim davar zeh shu ponel im nimtzaim latet lem kiyum v'yoter chibur min harishon. The fact that he gives sustenance to the world, that implies yet a deeper level of hashgacha. Amnam v'shalosh shot achronot u'misachekim leviatan. So how do you understand the end of the day? Right, that he plays with Leviathan. Haschok hazeh hu ratzon legamrei shemit ached ritzono imahem. Said, what does that mean? Right, what is playing?
Happy.
Yeah, it's not just what happens if Gersley and I are having a great time and we're just laughing, right? What are we doing at that point? Yes, exactly. She'ein daver yoter min haschok shu etzem haratzon legamrei. He said, and laughing is particularly right when you can joke around with somebody, right? That is.
You're like close to them.
Yes, or in Maimonidean terms, right? Unio mystico, right at the end, right? I mean, what's he saying? How does the world go? He said, first point is you've got to realize that God created the world. Then you've got to realize that He cares what goes on enough to react. But not only that, He sustains the world, meaning He's actively involved. And you want to know how much He's involved? What's the end goal of the world?
Right, unio mystico.
Yeah, that God and humanity, so to speak, have a...
Why is it Leviathan? What's
again, remember what the Rajba said, right? You can't... I mean, Leviathan is because that's it's part of the messianic eschatological visions to our Tanakh, so it's a good thing to pick, right? So he says,
But is it... Yeah. It's related to like the...
So like Rav Moshe ben Tibon, he says that this Agarata is a coded statement about the way that hashgacha works. Just unlike Rav Moshe ben Tibon said, what is the nature of the mashal?
How?
That what? Chaim. Exactly. Right. That at every stage in a human's life, God is with him. Right. Hashgacha is involved. The Maharal says, what is the point of this Agarata?
God's interaction with the world.
Right. That God. Right. It's not. Right, you don't have to find he's saying philosophically in people's heads, like what 4 stages do they go through in realizing the extent of God's hashgacha?
Right.
First, the first recognition is that there is a God. Right. Then the recognition that He cares at all. Then there's the recognition that not just reactively, but proactively, his presence in whatever way you think Hashgacha works sustains the world. And then finally you realize the belief is that the end goal of the world is mankind and God to...
Yeah. Sort of like a Havmin Maskanas.
Exactly. Right? And, it's more like through the day, what do I realize about God as I get to the end? Right. Now he notes, Amnam B'Gemara, Lechad Shnuya Kamar, B'Shalosh Rishon Dana Olam, B'Shalosh Shniyot Hu Osik B'Torah. He said there is a machlokes in the Gemara. Right? There's another shita that in the first 3 hours, he judges and then he learns Torah. So he says, Sover Kimashu Osik B'Torah Shiyoded Seder Shalemu Yoter Kiruv El HaNimtzaim Imashu Dan Ed HaNimtzaim Ki Adin Shu Dan Uvnivdal Mibal Adin Poel V'Mashu Yodea Seder Shalem B'Yediyah Zov Mitchaber Alehem. He said because at a certain level you could have thought that the fact that God judges is less interaction than he knows what's going on in the world. Right? Because said judging, yes it's reactive, but it's also somewhat impersonal. Right? Like if someone gives you their diary to read, right? You may not act on that, but that is an act of intimacy. Right? So he says, at some level, right, the fact that God judges is an indication of a higher level of involvement in the world than the fact that he created it and knows its essence. But at some level, the fact that he understands its essence is more intimate than the fact that he bothers reacting. Right? Meaning, right, there's right, if you want to figure out the right progression, right, there's elements of more or less hashgacha each of these aspects. Okay, if you skip to the next paragraph, Upneshu yitbarach mitchaber al nimtzei mitzad shleimutam. She'ein Hashem yitbarach mitchaber al davar shu chaser. V'zemru zal b'midrash ela toldot hashamayim v'aretz b'baram b'yom Hashem elokim eretz v'shamayim yizkir shem malei elam malei. Said God only really interacts with perfected beings, right? Ke'ein El Hashem yitbarach chibrol davar chaser. V'chol yom v'yom HaKadosh Baruch Hu mechadesh maseh breshit. Right now we get a little bit more mystical here, right? This is more the mystical camp, right? That God creates the world anew every day. L'kach nechshav kol yom l'briya b'vnei atzma. Right now this is right now. There are obviously psukim that go in this direction, but the Rambam's way of understanding this is that God is like the world is God's shadow. Right? God doesn't recreate it. It's just that because just like your shadow, right, would disappear if you weren't there, right? But Kabbalistically, right, the world is constantly being recreated. The Ramban goes in this direction. So now he picks up on that day one. He says, okay, fine. Why is the organizing mashal of this Gemara the day? Right, he says, why is the organizing metaphor the day? Because according to the more Kabbalistic understanding, God recreates us every day. Right, and therefore, if we're talking about Hashgacha, right? Okay. Skip to the next paragraph. It says, Omnam, yesh lefarish gamkein, v'hu derech echad mirashen gamkein. He said there's another level which works with the first one. Kimasha mar shaloshot rishonot yoshev osek b'torah. Kimasha yoshev osek b'torah. Ein ze rak yediat seder mitziut. Sheneto rak nimus seder mitziut kmo shamarnu. V'shalosh shniyot shepoel behem umanigam lefini musa mitziut asher ra'ui. Uv'shaloshot hu notein kiyum parnatzam v'hu amshech chad madatam. Shalosh achronot achar shalom shalem yesh lo hitadchut m'shen yitbarach v'zaschogim leviatan k'mot yitbayar. Right. So this is basically a summary of what he just said. But then he adds a level, which is ume'ata yedomen agar pratit shokol yom v'yom l'briya klalit. He said, however, there's two levels to this, right? Which is that you could read this about the individual, or you could read it about the world. Right, which if you remember, Ramosha ben Timon also sort of went in this direction, right? That you could, once you're talking about Hashgacha, you could interpret this Gemara as talking about an individual or talking about the world, and they're both right. Right?
Ramosha ben Timon say about the world?
What?
Rather be about the world stakes of.
I mean, you could, right? I mean, it's more about
the beginning of the world, the middle of the world, the end of the world.
No, humanity, right? Humanity, right? Like. Yes, you're right. I mean, he talked about either individuals or humanity, right? Maharal is talking more about either individuals or, right? Yeah, the world.
No, I don't know what individuals or humanity means. Is it just individuals and humanity?
I mean, yes, but the Agadah could still be referring to both, right? Meaning, it's true.
It's not referring to any individual. That'd be ridiculous.
No, it's fine. Yeah. I'm saying it's not like a big deal. I'm just pointing it out.
Ibn Tibon is still saying that there's like these four kinds of ways that he interacts. It's just he's expressing it through the four stages of man.
Yeah. Okay. So now if you turn to the next page, right, and this is where he tells you, and again, this is where Moshe Ibn Tibon said also, and what is the point of this whole Agadah? Right, this is to disprove the philosophers. Shem Amrim, Kiyut Barach, Misulak Ben Olam, Amash Amar, Misachek and Leviathan, Lashon Mischak, Vishil Kirotzel Omar, Tachlit Tachdur Ratzon Sheyesh El Hashem Yitbarach Im Broav, Sheritzono Mitachedim Em, V'zeh Esem Maschok. The Dafka Leviathan, now getting to Zev's point. Why the Leviathan? Okay, fine. Right? Ki abriya zod ein hi briya kmo shar briyot gashmiyim sheina davar kach. Kal ki b'chor ratzon gamor sheish lo el briya zod hi briya sheina gashmit. And now, by the way, remember when I told you, and when you read the Maharal, you see what I mean, right? The difference between philosophers, like rationalist philosophers and Kabbalists, is not always as big as you think, right? Until now, there's basically nothing here that the Rambam couldn't have written, right? The Rambam couldn't have written, right? And he tells you why the Leviathan.
It's a physical part.
Because the Leviathan is not physical. The Leviathan, no, it's not. Right? He says it's ein hi briya kamo shar briot gashmiyim. It's not a physical one. He says God wants to make it clear that when we say that in the end of the day, humanity will have unio mystico, it picks a mythical creature. Right? A creature that in Tanakh is mythical because that makes it clear that
it's not physical.
It's not physical. Right? Meaning, like I said, this may be the Maharal, but right, I tricked you and I said, it's going to be more Kabbalistic. There's really nothing here the Rambam couldn't sign on. Sure, the way they may think about it slightly differently, but fundamentally, right, there's a reason that the medieval Kabbalists all felt that they were philosophers. They just said Kabbalah picks up where philosophy ends off, and they stand on the shoulders of philosophers. That was their own mashal about themselves, right? Because they weren't actually in tension. So then he goes on. Let's see. Right, now, his mashal for schok is just that schok is like pure will, right? You know, like when you lose yourself in laughter, right? That's really the mashal he's trying to get at, right? That it's like, right? It's pure joy, right? Which is like pure wisdom, right? It's a very philosophical way of looking at laughter. Yeah.
Greater pleasure.
I'm not going to bring the eggs if you guys leave it out.
Now, so by the way, guys, let's try to get through this. If you look towards the end, right, guys, Yaakov, stop. Yaakov, not now.
Jeez.
He says,
that's not even mine.
V'od tavin, and then at the end, after saying something that basically could work for a Kabbalist or a mystic, at the end, so he adds a little bit of Kabbalah. He says, V'od tavin, right? This is like. You see where it is, like O Tavin, like the paragraph over here?
Yeah.
It says O Tavin ki ra'ui sheyeh kan arba dvarim ki yudbarach bara ha'olam ba'arba otiyot shel shem hagadol. Right, here's where you get the Kabbalah at the end. He says, why 4? Because God created the world with the 4 letters of His name, whatever that means. Okay, fine. I don't know what that means, right? And then he gets into, okay. Shnamar ki b'ka Hashem tzor olamim v'avin b'chachma v'kor b'vina v'timtzav v'zeh she'osik b'torah tchila v'akadan ba'olam shtei otiyot achronim. Again, I don't pretend to know what he's just saying now, right? He says, and therefore the first 2 hours of the day, the first 2 chalakim of the day are created with the yud hey, and then the net ones with the vav hey, because they represent different types of hashgacha. Okay, I don't know what that means anymore. Fine. Okay, fine, but Big Adol, right? You see, he's a Kabbalist. At the end, he throws in a little bit of more of a Kabbalah thing, but basically, right, what he says is, okay, he agrees with Moshe ibn Tibon that it's about hashgacha. That the point of this is to prove there's hashgacha. He just argues that what's the difference? It's not about the 4 stages in life. It's the 4 stages in the philosophical journey as we realize the way in which God interacts with the world, and the end goal is unio mystico.
That makes
right?
sense.
Right? Which is actually really nice. Right? And you can take this, right? Again, you can plug in whatever you want at the end. Right? Now, at the end, he says, and what does it mean that God learns him tinoko shel beis rabban? So he says, why tinoko shel beis rabban? Why with students? Right? Why with little kids? Tell me, Gersley, Mr. Philosopher.
In the sense that
What's unique about kids? Why would you say that God learns with kids?
I mean, you could use it as a
because
metaphor for the
they're just learning it, whereas old people have learned it already.
And therefore, good. And therefore, what does it say about God? So he says in very philosophical language, because God is bringing minakol halapoal. Right? Because the way is, how is God's hashgacha work? That He brings things from potential into actuality. How do you represent that? By saying that He learns the Torah, which is taking theoretical with right, kids who you understand. That when you say you teach Torah to kids, that means you plant the seeds and bring it to fruition, which is the way God relates to the world. Cool. Right? Which is a very nice, I don't know, I think it's a very nice. Yeah.
analogy.
But it's, I mean, it's this image of starting it off, right? And he says, this is amukim ma'od, right? It's actually a beautiful, metaphorical read. Right? Again, there are certain similarities with Moshe ben Tibon, right?
Yeah.
But it actually works very...
Yeah, I think this is better than Moshe.
I'm fine with that.
But... Yeah,
okay.
For sure.
I just gave you one more thing, so we just have a few minutes. In number 4 here, I just gave you a little bit from one of these modern websites, where he puts a slightly different perspective on the Levyasan. He notes that the Rashba and the Chidushei Agados to Baba Basra, you can look it up there, discusses the deeper meaning of the illusion of the Levyasan. You can tell it's a yeshivish website. Okay, fine. The Levyatan, whatever you want. It's the same. He explains that the Levyasan refers to a person who uses his mind properly to discriminate between good and evil.
What? But Rosh even to one said it was the Yetzer Hara. No?
Correct. Now he takes it. The Rashba says the opposite. Says why? Because he says the seichel, the discriminating element of the mind, combines with the nefesh, the person's ability to think in such a manner, is referred to as a levyasan. The levyasan implies a bond or chibur, as in the verse Hapam Yilaveh Ishi Eli. Right. So the Rashba says that the secret of levyasan is that it's a play on the word livia, right? To accompany, right? Like Levi. Right now, my husband will accompany me. It also means an adornment, and it also means a necklace. Right? Ki livias chein, liroshecha. So Levyasan is an allusion to the tzaddikim with whom Hashem laughs when He destroys their Shem in order to provide the tzaddikim with salvation. Right? So the Rashba says, what's the Levyasan? Right? So now you could plug this in both for Moshe ben Tibon or the Maharal. Why the Levyasan at the end? Because the Levyasan is two things. One is that he is he with whom God is. Right? Right, that there's livia, and it is the mashal for Torah, kilivas chein heim l'roshecha, meaning the person who's reached the pinnacle of perfection.
That's like precisely the opposite of what we said.
Of Moshe ben Tibon, correct? Right, but it's the same as the Maharal, right? It's against Moshe Tibon. It's right. Moshe Tibon says at the end God laughs at the Yetzer Hara. Ramoshe, the Maharal, and based on the Rashba, say no. Why the end of the world is there Levyasan? Not because he's... Now, it's funny. They're saying opposite things, which come to the same point. Right? Ramoshe Tibon says, the end, we laugh after the Yetzer Hara, because all that matters is, goodness. Ramoshe, the Maharal, and the Rashba say no. The reason the end of days God laughs with the Levyasan is because the only thing that's left is tzaddikim who are with God and have discriminated good from bad. Right? Now...
Yeah, but he holds that...
Sure.
That it's good. It's an essence of good.
It's just weird that
for sure.
Tzaddikim are characterized as these big sea monsters.
Yeah.
It's really shame.
I don't understand quite the Rashba, but the point is, what's amazing about this, right? Why do I want to go through Maharal? Why do I want to go through this? Because both, you have a Kabbalist and a medieval rationalist. Both interpreting the same Gemara. Both of them coming at different angles. Both of them think Levyasan mean opposite things, right? And Big Adol, they both think that this Gemara means Pachot Yuter, the same thing, right? That Hashem is involved in Hashgacha. Either you say that He's involved at each stage in life in different ways, or for the Maharal it means that as you go through the philosophical process, you realize that God's Hashgacha is more and more intense. And they both agree that the end goal of the world is that God is unified with Tzaddikim. The way Moshe Tibon gets it is that we laugh at the Yetzer Hara. The way the Rashba gets it, the way the Maharal gets it, is we laugh with the Yetzer Tov and those who are with God. Opposite things. But that should prove to you that Chazal's effort is actually quite successful. Right? Meaning, because even if you quibble about it, the fact that people from radically different schools, right, with even significantly different interpretations of certain elements of the metaphor, Pachot Yoter, get the same philosophical message from it. What's the point? What does it teach us about life and the way God interacts? Right? Yeah. That's a pretty impressive statement about Chazal's ability to hide philosophical ideas in a way that a smart person who is Yored L'Om Shel Davar will be able to pull out the philosophical truths. Right? I agree with Zev. I happen to think the Maharal here is actually quite neat. Right? The Maharal here is actually, I think, in many ways smoother than the Moshe ben Tibon, even though they both have what to suggest themselves. Okay, good. Cool.